Hey Celtics Nation. Welcome back to the channel for another exclusive deep dive into everything Boston Celtics. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and smash the like so you never miss out on the latest updates, insider news, and hot takes on our favorite team. Today, we're easing into things a bit quieter than yesterday after all the madness around the Georgian trade and the Chris Boucher signing, big moves that definitely shake up the roster construction. But now that the dust has settled, it's time to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. We're talking about the Eastern Conference as a whole, some unrest bubbling under the surface, and how all of that could actually shape the Celtics' trajectory not just for this upcoming season, but for the next couple of years as well. Before we get too deep into that, I want to remind you all to get involved in the conversation. If you're new here or maybe just stubborn and haven't subscribed yet, do yourself a favor and join the fun. We keep it real, we keep it passionate, and we always want to hear your takes, especially on the crazy moves happening around the league. Now, let's jump right into it with one of the hottest stories making waves right now, the massive extension signed by De'Aaron Fox. This deal is huge. Fox locked in a 4-year, $229 million extension, which, as you probably know, vaults him into the territory of the highest paid point guards in the league. This contract has not only set a new benchmark for Fox himself but also sent ripples across the NBA, especially among other point guards whose own extensions are looming. Suddenly, players like Tyler Herro and Trae Young are in the spotlight, with their teams weighing how to handle their upcoming contract negotiations. What's fascinating here is the impact of the new media rights deals and the salary cap increases. Each extension tests superstars' seems to push the ceiling higher, making previous max contracts look less appealing by comparison. De'Aaron Fox's contract, for example, might seem like a steep price tag now, but it's likely to look more reasonable the next time a star guard negotiates a max deal. This dynamic creates a domino effect that's hard for teams to navigate, especially those operating under tight salary cap constraints. Taking a closer look at Tyler Herro's situation with the Miami Heat, reports have highlighted that he becomes eligible for a 3-year extension worth nearly $150 million right before the start of the new season. Miami's management, especially Pat Riley, has always been known for cautious and strategic financial decisions. Just think back to how they handled Jimmy Butler's situation. Riley's approach will be key in determining whether Miami commits big to Herro or considers pivoting to a different roster construction strategy. If Miami chooses not to extend Herro, that decision could shake up the Eastern Conference landscape significantly. Without Herro locked in, Miami might signal a broader rebuild or reset approach, especially considering they've already made moves adding players like Norman Powell and still have Bam Adebayo and Andrew Wiggins on the roster. There is also an intriguing young player in Khalil Wherbos starting to draw some attention. But if Herro gets the extension, it keeps Miami's core intact and means the Heat will remain a tough competitor in the East. Now, let's talk about Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks, because this situation might be even more impactful. As of now, the Hawks have not yet reached out to Trae Young about an extension, which, according to ESPN's Mark Spears, has left Young disappointed. Atlanta's front office seems to be taking a wait-and-see approach, which makes sense given the team's current roster construction. This is probably the best Hawks team we've seen in years, with key additions like Kristaps Porzingis and the defensive presence of Clint Capella and others. Atlanta is projected to win over 50 games this season and possibly secure a top 3 seed in the East. Yet, there seems to be hesitation about committing a massive contract to Trae Young before seeing how well this roster gels. If the team don't make a deep playoff run with this lineup, questions will arise about whether Young is the right centerpiece for the future. The Hawks also have an unprotected first-round pick from the New Orleans Pelicans, which could be a major asset in any potential trades involving Young. If Atlanta struggles or opts not to extend Young, it opens the door to trade rumors and opportunities. Other teams could swap into offer max contracts, and an interesting candidate for that conversation could be the Orlando Magic, who are building a promising young core. And then, of course, there is the Celtics, who might consider adding a player like Young if it makes sense financially and fits the team's style. Both Tyler Herro and Trae Young's situations raise important questions about the Celtics' own roster and future. Currently, the Celtics have Anthony Simons, Peyton Pritchard, and Derrick White as guard options. White isn't exactly a pure point guard but can play the position when needed. However, none of these players move the needle quite like a max-level guard would. If the Celtics were to pursue a player like Herro or Young, it would come with a hefty price tag, close to 40 pesos million for Herro and north of 50 pesos million for Young. So the team needs to weigh whether those contracts improve the roster enough to justify the investment. Trae Young is particularly interesting because of his passing and pick-and-roll skills. Is one of the best playmakers in the league, though his three-point shooting is somewhat inconsistent, and his defense is a concern. On the other hand, Herro is more of an offensive weapon but less impactful on defense. The defensive limitations of both players are a factor that can't be overlooked, especially for a Celtics team that prizes defense as part of its identity. Shout out to Caitlin Cooper, who did an excellent interview with Rick Carlisle recently. Carlisle, a long-time NBA coach, talked about how the Big Three era in the league is basically over. With the current collective bargaining agreement and salary cap rules, teams don't have the flexibility to stack three max-level stars the way they used to. Instead, teams are building deeper rosters with more serviceable players rather than used to superstars and one maxed-out third wheel. This philosophy influences how teams view extensions and contracts for players like Herro and Young. You're seeing this play out across the league with restricted free agents, though. For instance, Jonathan Kuminga is reportedly holding up the market, and Golden State has all the leverage. The Kings offered Malik Monk and a first-round pick to acquire Kuminga, but the Warriors are standing firm, not eager to overpay. This leverage dynamic affects other players too. Josh Giddey and Cam Thomas have been mentioned as players who believe they deserve 30 pesos million per year. But teams simply don't have the flexibility to give out those kinds of deals right now. Let's move on to some of the biggest storylines in the Eastern Conference. Giannis Antetokounmpo's future in Milwaukee. The unrest surrounding Giannis continues to simmer, and it's unclear whether he will stay with the Bucks this upcoming season or explore other options. There is always speculation about where a player of his caliber could land, and some of the rumors include the New York Knicks as a potential suitor. The Knicks, with players like Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges already under contract, could look to make a splash by pairing Giannis with Jalen Brunson to try to replicate the success of Giannis and Damian Lillard from previous years. However, any trade package to bring Giannis to New York would be complex, especially considering salary matching and the Celtics' own assets. Boston would have to put together a significant trade, likely including Jaylen Brown given his contract size, plus additional players and draft picks to make the salaries work. The Celtics currently have 5 second-round picks left after trading to Toyota in the Nyan for RJ Lewis Jr. deal, but their first-round picks for the next several years remain intact. That gives Boston some flexibility, but giving up Jaylen Brown, who is locked in long-term and a cornerstone of the franchise, would be a massive decision. Would Celtics fans be willing to trade away Brown, some solid role players, and multiple first-round picks for Giannis? That's a hotly debated question and one that the front office would wrestle with deeply. Other Eastern Conference teams to watch include the Toronto Raptors, who remain a wild card with a mix of young talent and veterans. With the Eastern Conference as unpredictable as ever, from the Pacers adjusting without their key player Miles Turner, to the Celtics navigating without Jason Tatum for now, and the uncertainty around Giannis. It's shaping up to be a wild season. One final note before we shift gears, Austin Reaves has reportedly started pushing for a contract in the 30 pesos million per year range. Comparing him to Derrick White, who makes around 28 pesos million this year and a similar production, raises interesting questions about value and fit. Reaves put up about 20 points, 6 assists, and 4.5 rebounds per game last season with solid shooting splits, while White has been a strong defensive presence and a consistent playmaker for the Celtics. If you're rebuilding a championship team, the choice between offense-first Reaves and defense-first White isn't easy, but White's defensive impact and clutch plus might give him the edge. Alright Celtics fans, let's keep rolling because there is still so much to break down about the Eastern Conference, the Celtics, roster, and what lies ahead this season and beyond. Now that we've talked about the big contract extensions and the shifting landscape with guards like De'Aaron Fox, Tyler Herro, and Trae Young, it's time to dig deeper into the Celtics' internal situation and the strategic choices they face. This includes how they balance their salary cap, the role players who could emerge as difference makers, and the impact of the broader Eastern Conference's attack upon Boston's playoff chances. The Celtics, for starters, have a fascinating roster construction challenge. They have key veterans locked in, like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who represent the core of the team's future. But with Brown's contract being one of the heftier ones on the books, and Tatum's upcoming Supermax extension looming, Boston's flexibility is limited. Add in Marcus Smart's contract and Derrick White's deal, and you quickly realize that Boston isn't exactly swimming in cap space. That means their front office has to be exceptionally clever in how they add pieces. Look at the recent acquisition of Chris Boucher. Is a veteran who brings energy and versatility off the bench, and his contract isn't overwhelming. It's a smart, cost-effective signing that addresses depth without hampering flexibility. But it also highlights a critical point: the Celtics need to find impact players on reasonable deals or via trades that don't trump future assets. This is increasingly important given how teams like the Miami Heat and Atlanta Hawks are structuring their rosters with star players locked into big contracts. Another interesting factor is the role of young, developing players on the Celtics. Anthony Simons and Peyton Pritchard, for instance, have shown flashes of potential but haven't yet cemented themselves as reliable contributors in the playoff environment. Boston will be watching closely to see if they can step up, especially if injuries strike or the team needs fresh energy in critical moments. The Celtics have long been known for their strong culture and emphasis on defense and teamwork, so players who buy into that system and perform their roles efficiently will have value, even if they aren't superstars. This raises a question that's been buzzing in fan circles: can the Celtics afford to be patient with some of these younger guys, or do they need to pursue a big impact star now? The answer isn't simple. On one hand, rushing to sign or trade for a big-name player could disrupt chemistry and saddle the team with salary issues down the road. On the other, waiting too long risks missing a championship window, especially with teams like Milwaukee and Miami evolving rapidly. Speaking of Milwaukee, the uncertainty around Giannis Antetokounmpo is a massive wildcard for the entire East. If Giannis does, the Bucks remain a top contender, but if he leaves, it sends shockwaves through the conference. Boston fans are understandably curious about what that means for the Celtics' championship hopes. Do they prepare for a showdown with Giannis and the Bucks, or pivot toward a future where the East is wide open? That's why tracking Giannis' contract talks and potential trade rumors is critical in understanding Boston's strategic planning. On the topic of trades, the Celtics have some intriguing assets. The unprotected first-round picks they hold over the next several years are incredibly valuable in today's market. Other teams might covet those picks in return for talent, or Boston could package them to acquire the missing piece that takes the team from contender to champion. But again, the challenge lies in determining who that missing piece is. Is it a scoring guard like Herro or Young? A defensive stalwart? A versatile forward who can stretch the floor? The front office scouting and analytics teams have their work cut out for them. Now, let's shift to some of the other Eastern Conference teams because understanding their moves and challenges gives us a context on where the Celtics stand. The Miami Heat, for example, have a fascinating roster with Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, and recent additions like Norman Powell. But they face significant questions about their depth and whether they can compete with the Celtics and Bucks in a 7-game series. Miami's culture under Pat Riley is one of grit and defense, but with Tyler Herro's looming extension, the Heat could either solidify their core or make tough decisions on who fits in that winning formula. The New York Knicks, on the other hand, are quietly becoming a team to watch. With Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, and Jalen Brunson leading the way, plus the recent signing of Karl Anthony Towns, the Knicks are assembling a versatile and skilled lineup. Rumors about their interest in Giannis have. NIKOLA VUCEVIC's potential arrival in Boston has already set the sports world abuzz with speculation, and while no official confirmation has yet been made. Sources close to the team suggest that talks are progressing faster than many anticipated. The Celtics, who have been seeking to bolster their front-court depth, appear to see VUCEVIC as the missing piece to complement their current roster, providing a mix of scoring, rebounding, and veteran leadership. Fans are already imagining the possibilities on both ends of the floor, as VUCEVIC's proven ability to stretch the defense with his shooting and create mismatches in the post could dramatically alter Boston's offensive schemes. Analysts are weighing the implications of such a move, considering how it might affect the minutes distribution for existing big men like Robert Williams and Al Horford. And whether the team can seamlessly integrate VUCEVIC into their rotation without disrupting chemistry. The rumor mill has not yet slowed down, with social media users and the sports talk shows dissecting every potential scenario, from trade packages to salary cap adjustments, fueling endless debates. Even if this acquisition remains speculative, the mere prospect has reinvigorated Celtics chatter, hinting at an aggressive front office strategy and at contending at the highest level. While VUCEVIC's numbers over recent seasons have been consistently impressive, particularly in scoring and rebounding, questions remain about whether he can fully translate his skill set into Boston's system without causing redundancy among the Celtics' interior players. The whispers around the league suggest that VUCEVIC could thrive in a lineup that prioritizes ball movement and spacing, potentially pairing with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to create a dynamic offensive trio that opponents would struggle to contain. However, some critics argue that Boston's defensive schemes, which have relied heavily on rim protection and versatility, might be tested if VUCEVIC's mobility does not align perfectly with their current strategies. The speculation is further complicated by potential trade rumors, as the Celtics might need to part with draft assets or young talent to make the acquisition financially viable under NBA regulations. Meanwhile, insiders hint that VUCEVIC himself is intrigued by the possibility of joining a storied franchise with championship aspirations, a factor that could sway negotiations in favor of Boston. Even if nothing materializes, the constant chatter surrounding this potential signing has already shifted the narrative of the off-season, making the Celtics one of the league's most talked about teams and demonstrating how a single name can reignite excitement among fans and analysts alike. The chatter about VUCEVIC joining the Celtics has also sparked speculation regarding how the team's bench rotation might evolve, with reports suggesting that the front office is exploring multiple strategies to integrate his skill set without undermining the contributions of veteran role players or emerging young talent. Basketball insiders indicate that there might be subtle adjustments to playing time and defensive assignments, which could affect the rhythm of the team during the regular season and even into the playoffs, should the move come to fruition. Some rumors suggest that VUCEVIC's presence might encourage the coaching staff to experiment with small ball lineups more frequently, leveraging his ability to stretch the floor from the perimeter while still providing a physical presence in the paint. Conversely, skeptics raise concerns about potential redundancies, especially given the Celtics' current mix of forwards and centers who already contribute in rebounding and pick-and-roll scenarios. The speculation extends beyond basketball strategy, with contract negotiations and locker room chemistry also fueling conversation among sports commentators and fans alike, keeping the rumor mill lively. Even casual observers of the NBA are now tuning into Celtics updates, curious to see whether Boston will make a move that could shift the balance of power in the Eastern Conference, highlighting how a single acquisition, whether confirmed or merely rumored, can dominate headlines and fuel endless debate among analysts, commentators, and passionate supporters across multiple platforms. Adding NIKOLA VUCEVIC to the Celtics has also raised whispers about how his potential arrival might influence the team's championship trajectory. With some league analysts suggesting that his experience and scoring ability could be the differentiating factor in tight playoff series. The rumor mill has proposed that VUCEVIC could serve as a reliable secondary scorer behind Tatum and Brown, particularly in matchups against teams with dominant interior defenders, allowing Boston to diversify its offensive looks and improve efficiency in critical games. Additionally, some insiders hint that his veteran presence could provide mentorship for younger players, helping guide them through big pressure situations and fostering a culture of professionalism and preparation that could be instrumental during playoff runs. Speculation also surrounds how his integration could impact team chemistry, as whispers suggest that leadership dynamics might sadly shift with a player of VUCEVIC's stature and experience joining the roster. Meanwhile, Boston fans have embraced the possibility enthusiastically, flooding social media with mock lineups, highlight reels, and analytical breakdowns of potential on-court combinations. Even without confirmation, the speculation alone has heightened anticipation for the upcoming season, creating a narrative of cautious optimism. Should VUCEVIC ultimately join the Celtics, analysts predict the team's style of play and strategic options could expand considerably, sparking renewed conversations about their prospects for contending in the Eastern Conference and potentially altering the course of what is shaping up to be a highly competitive NBA season. Finally, the swirling rumors of NIKOLA VUCEVIC coming to Boston have also ignited a broader conversation about the Celtics' overall strategy in the league, suggesting that the front office might be willing to take calculated risks in pursuit of a championship. Sources close to the team indicate that discussions have included various trade scenarios, potential contract extensions, and creative ways to balance salary obligations while still maximizing on-court performance. Observers speculate that acquiring VUCEVIC could signal a shift toward a more aggressive approach to roster construction, prioritizing immediate impact players over long-term developmental projects. The speculation extends to media pundits and former players, who weigh the pros and cons of integrating a usage big man into an already talented roster, debating whether such a move could tip the scales in playoff matchups or create unforeseen challenges in lineup flexibility. Fans, meanwhile, are eagerly anticipating any official announcements, creating an environment where even unconfirmed rumors dominate conversations across digital platforms and sports networks. The ongoing chatter surrounding VUCEVIC has already reshaped expectations for B. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.